Good morning and welcome to botany class. In the previous class, we discussed the topic pollination. What is pollination? Pollination is the transfer of pollen grain from anther to the stigmatic surface. Look at this diagram. This is the anther. Anther which possess pollen grains. These pollen grains are dusted on the stigmatic surface. Stigma. So pollination is a process by which transfer of pollen from anther to stigma. This process we discussed in the previous class. And there are number of types of pollination, self-pollination, cross-pollination, and different types under self and cross-pollination. Today's class, let's discuss the agents of pollination. Agents of pollination. Depend upon the number of agents and the nature of agents, there are two main classifications, biotic and abiotic. Abiotic and biotic. There are abiotic agents, biotic agents. The abiotic agents includes wind and water. Wind and water includes abiotic agent. Biotic agents are animals. So today we are going to discuss in detail about these three types of pollination, which is wind pollinated flowers are called as anemophilous. So the process is called as anemophily. The water pollinated flowers are called as hydrophily. Hydrophily and anemophily. And the animal pollinated flowers are termed as zoophily. Let us see one by one. Anemophilous flower. Define anemophilous. Anemophilous flowers are the flowers which carried out pollination by wind. Define hydrophily. Hydrophily is the process by which pollination carried out by water. So there are two types of hydrophily. They are named as epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily at the surface of water, pollination taking place at the surface of water. Hypohydrophily beneath the surface of water. And zoophily, there are number of animals including mammals, rodents, arboreal animals, reptiles, garden lizard. These are all types of bees, butterflies, birds, insects, bats, snails, all are including under zoophily. First of all, let us see the anemophilous flower and the process of anemophily. These all types of flowers, either anemophily or hydrophily or zoophily flowers, shows number of adaptations. There are number of mechanisms observed by means of this pollination. So depend upon this, the flowers may be adapted to carry out the particular mechanism. Anemophilous flowers. Anemophilous flower shows certain adaptations because it needs wind. So these plants are situated in the wind exposing regions to easily carry out the pollen grains by the light breeze. So it's a chance event. Sometimes the stigmatic surface of this flower may not get the flowers easily, which is effectively not pollinated if the wind is not blow or it is it do not get a chance to fall on the stigmatic surface. So, such a way the plants are adapted. So, let us see what are the characteristic features observed in this anemophilous flowers. So, first important 5-mark question is characteristic features of anemophilous flowers. These anemophilous flowers shows pentulus. Pentulus which shows catkin inflorescence or spike inflorescence. The spike inflorescence and the catkin inflorescence, there are number of flowers. See, this is one example which shows spike inflorescence. Indeterminate type of inflorescence, elongated axis, indeterminate with sessile flowers. There is no perianth. It is attached at the main axis, inconspicuous flower. Catkin inflorescence. This is the type of catkin inflorescence. So these grass flowers mainly it is inconspicuous flower which is not noticed well. Other flowers are, other angiosperm flowers are brightly colored, but this anemophilous flowers are inconspicuous flowers. The axis of this, the grasses, example, the grasses, grass, sugarcane, maize, these all are examples of this anemophilous flower. So this flower it do not produce nectar, it is colorless, odorless, and so that it is a inconspicuous flower. Grasses. Most of the monocots, grasses comes under this type of anemophilous flowers. So main axis, the main axis of the inflorescence is elongated. Main axis elongated. Sometimes this leaves are reduced. It is exposed out of the leaves. So easily carried out through the wind. These are the leaves. The inflorescence axis is exposed out of this leaves. That is another characteristic features. And this produces abundant of pollen grains. The pollen grains are numerous and the perianth is reduced. The perianth is the outermost bud of the flower which includes calyx and corolla. But this type of flowers, it reduces perianth, either the perianth is absent or it may reduce. That is another characteristic feature of anemophilous flowers. Pollens produces numerous and the pollens are the stamens, pollen grains which is present inside the anther are light, numerous, enormous, that is enormous, number is small, very small and light, so that it can easily carried out by this breeze. So one of the example we are going to see maize flower, maize, zea maize. In this flower, it is a monoecious unisexual flower, monoecious. And unisexual. Monoecious flowers, plant produces two different kinds of flower like male and female within the same plant. So in this maize flower, the terminal region of this inflorescence axis, it produces the male flower. So this is named as tassel. Terminally, the male flower produces the terminal region of the axis and the female flower produces laterally. This is called cob and it is named as silk. Silk is the stigmatic region, stigmostyle. This region is known as silk. The male inflorescence is called tassel. Now in this, leaves are produced, monocot plant. It produces the leaf. This is the tassel. Monoecious plant consists of male and female flower in the same axis, same inflorescence axis. And the mechanism is when the wind blows, this maize flower, it is not lightweight. The pollen grains are heavy. So the light breeze cannot carry out this flower, this pollen grain. When the wind blows, it shakes this terminal tassel inflorescence. When it shakes, it falls down on the stigmatic surface. The pollen grains are falling on the stigmatic surface because it presents laterally. So vertically it falls down and effective pollination taking place in this maize plant. This is one of the example of anemophilous flower. Let's move to hydrophily. What is hydrophily? Pollination carried out by water is called hydrophily. There are two types of hydrophily, epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. Epihydrophily pollination takes place at the surface of water. Hypo, below the water level. So there are two examples we are going to study, that is Vallisneria spiralis. One of the example, Vallisneria spiralis, and hydrilla. Hydrilla also water pollinated flowers. But Iconia, though it is a water plant, the pollination cannot taking place by water, but it takes place by wind in Iconia. So Vallisneria is a dioecious plant. Two different plant produces two different flowers. In this, the water level, epi and hypo. Let us see the difference between epihydrophily and hypohydrophily. So epihydrophily, example Vallisneria spiralis. This is the plant. This is the submerged rooted hydrophyte. Submerged rooted hydrophyte. At the time of pollination, the flower elongates to raise the level, the point structures, rises the inflorescence, female inflorescence up to the water level, and there is a depression appears in the female flower. This is the female flower. And another plant, the male flower develops. Here is the male inflorescence. Which produces. These male flowers are detached and floats on the surface of water. This flowers detaches from the parent and it floats on the surface of water. The leaves are looking like ribbon shaped. So these are dioecious plant, submerged water plant. This is the female flower, this is the male flower. Male flowers are get detached and float on the surface of water. When the female flowers, this male flowers come and contact with this depression, it falls on the stigmatic region of the female flower and effective pollination taking place. This type is seen in Vallisneria spiralis called epihydrophily. That means at the surface of water level pollination taking place. But another type is observed in Zostera. Zostera is a marine grass. So this plant shows needle shaped very large pollen grains. It present in any depth of the water, because the water current, when the water current moves, the pollen grain, the gravity of the pollen grain also same at the level of this water current. So it may float on any depth of the water. So when it reaches the stigmatic surface, a pollination, effective pollination taking place. So abiotic agents are anemophily and hydrophily. Let us move to zoophily. Zoophily includes number of animals. It is classified into different types like birds, zoophily, number of zoophily, birds, bats, insects, ants, snake. Depend upon these agents carried out pollination, they are classified into different types. Birds pollinated flowers are called as ornithophilous, ornithophily. Bats, chiropterophily. Insects, entomophily. Ants, myrmecophily. Snail, malacophily. First, we learn all these names without confusion. All these are includes as animals. Birds, you may see there are number of birds visiting the flowers and it moves flower to flower, plant to plant. When it goes to visit for sucking the nectars. So birds pollinating flowers are called as ornithophily. Bats, pollinating flowers are called as chiropterophily. Insects, entomophily. Ants, myrmecophily. Snail, malacophily. Let's see one by one. These flowers also show some adaptations to carry out different mechanisms. For example, birds, ornithophilous flower. What are the adaptations observed in ornithophilous flowers? The ornithophilous flowers, there are early morning when you visit or come out of the house, you may see or observe lot of birds like hummingbird, sunbird, honey-eating birds. So many birds which flies here and there and it visits flowers to suck the nectar. So these flowers are called as ornithophilous flowers. And these birds come to suck the nectar. Normally, the flowers are brightly colored, very large flowers, brightly colored like red, yellow, blue, orange, different colors. And this ornithophilous flower which produces number of nectars. They are scentless but produces abundance of nectars. So these birds, hummingbird which comes and suck the nectar. So its floral parts are leathery and withstand the impact of the visitors. So the petals or the corolla, this calyx, these parts, the floral parts are highly or leathery, very thick to impact. What are the impact that comes when the bird is sitting on it? It can withstand. So it is adapted. The flowers are adapted in such a way. So this ornithophilous flowers show this type of adaptations. So adaptations are important questions. What are the adaptations seen in anemophilous flower, ornithophilous flower and entomophilous flowers? 3 different questions are there. Prepare it as 5 mark question. Then these all definitions are 2 mark question and the flow chart. Sometimes they may ask for 5 mark or 3 mark questions. So question wise you plan and learn these all questions. Second type of pollination is chiropterophily, bats. You know that bats are nocturnal habitat which is active at night. So these flowers are adapted. The adaptations of this flower is chiropterophily flowers or odor. It produces a scented flowers which opens at dusk, either at dusk or after dusk. So when it opens, it produces the smell to attract the bats towards it. And the inflorescence axis, the stamens and stigma exposed beyond the level of this leaves and other floral parts. So one of the example, Adamsonia. So Adamsonia, here digitalis, Adamsonia, digitalis. In this, bears pollinator flowers. So these bears are trying to hold this flower by its stigma. It produces a ball-shaped stigma and style. So it holds the flower by clasping with this to its breast, and it sucking the nectars. When it collects the nectars, the pollen grains are loaded its breast, and when it visits to the next flower, it can be dusted on the other flower and brings about effective pollination. That is Pteropterophily, adaptation. And entomophily. Entomophilus is very important because insects, there are number of insects like butterflies, insects, moths, flies, honeybees. So these all dragonfly, all these are come and visit, beetles, pests. So ants, these all insects are come and visit to collect the nectars. So this type of flowers are called as entomophilous flower. What are the adaptations? This also large flower. This bird ornithophilous flowers are funnel shaped or urn shaped. Urn shaped is this shaped. Urn shaped or funnel shaped, ornithophilous flower. Urn shaped, funnel shaped, or this broad. The petal and corolla part is very broad in nature to suck the birds easily suck the nectar. Here this entomophilous flowers also colored. If it is single, it produces as clusters. Most of the Asteraceae species. Asteraceae members are involved in entomophily, and the number of flowers it produces. And in this case, it produces number of nectars because this nectars and the pollen, sometimes the pollens are edible to eat these visitors. The insects are eat this, beetles, and sometimes the beetle and beetles, when it is come and attract towards this nectars, it produces a foul odor. To attract the beetles, it produces a foul odor. That is another adaptation. For this, sometimes some flowers which produces a cell, honey producing cell, nectary cells secreting honey. So sometimes the proboscis of this insects pierces and suck the nectars from this plants. That's the adaptation found in entomophily. Then ants pollinating flowers. So ants pollinating flowers are called as myrmecophily. And the snails are water aquatic plants. The snails are either terrestrial, slug and snails which moves here and there or crawling slowly among the this aquatic herbs. Pollination is effectively carried out. Then, so this snail pollinating flowers are called as malacophily. Ants pollinating flowers are myrmecophily. There are some interesting mechanism can be observed in insect pollinating flowers, entomophilous flowers. One of the examples is salvia. Liver mechanism is observed. Liver mechanism. In this flower, this salvia flower is a bilobate flower. Bilobate, the corolla is bilobate, which produces, here is the stigma, gynoecium, and there are two types of stamens. Observe two different types of stamen. One is fertile stamen, another one sterile stamen. This is the fertile stamen and the other is sterile stamen. So this This flowers, this honey, bees come and visit the flowers. So it brings about the striking mechanisms. So striking a liver mechanism, it does that. When it comes and visit, when the bees comes and visit here, this moves towards the head to the sterile region. So this falls at the back of the, it strike on the back of the bees. So the pollen grains falls on the back of this or the wings. When it visits to the next flower, it drops on the surface of this stigmatic region. So this type of mechanism is called as liver mechanism. So in the next class, let us see this Samia mechanism and some more interesting mechanism of pollination. So this all questions, today's class, all these questions you may learn thorough. The questions you will get through the WhatsApp. So this all questions, previous class also you may not learn. Sometimes there will be a pending in the process of learning. You cover all, continuously you learn and finish all the portions before the next class. Thank you.